What's going on, everybody? I'm excited to be joined today by my brother, Robbie Jaeger, journalist of the MCSC Network. I always love having this guy on because we talk about a lot about financial corruption and things that you guys should know. And he has his new Substack, which you guys should all follow. He's going to talk about that here today. So, Robbie, thank you very much for being here, man. How are you?
What's up, man? Appreciate you having me back on. It's been a little while, but hope you're doing well.
Yeah, and before we get started, I just want to say happy birthday to Julian Assange. We have our brothers and sisters from the MCSC network down there marching on the ground in LA.
True.
So yeah, I just want to get that word out about Julian Assange.
For sure, man. They've been out there killing it too. I mean, just day in, day out, organizing, marching, and just getting at least somebody in some kind of media spaces are actually doing something. And Steve, in particular, he's been like the sole consistent voice. It feels like, at least on the ground, and for the last for years now. Quite honestly. So yeah, it's good shit to see for sure.
Him, Glory, being loud on the mic, on the
Always.
ground. Misty also pressuring people to talk about this, famous people or journalists who should be talking about this. She's out there pressuring them. So yeah, I'm really proud of being with you guys, in this fight for freeing Julian Assange.
Yeah.
So yeah, let's start out by talking about your Substack, Robbie. So this is a new, thing that you started, Politify. You want to talk a little bit more about that and what you're doing with it?
Well, sure. So, I mean, obviously it's, going to be the new place where most of my, journalism is going to be, it's going to be its new home. So basically, my Twitter feed, for those of you that may not follow me, it's a lot of stuff that I report may not be like super world crushing or groundbreaking in that moment. And over the course of the week and the researching, that I do, I come across a lot of information that may fit something, like it may be important, but it may be not worthy of an entire 800-word article, but maybe it needs a little bit more than just a tweet to explain. So I wanted to kind of find a home for all of that for all those types of stories. So I started a newsletter. It's called Politify, as you mentioned, and basically, that's where you're going to be able to find all those stories. I'm going to try to do, a lead story every week, a little bit of a longer piece. I'll follow that up with, some summaries of some other major campaign finance headlines, political finance, lobbying. I'm going to have, basically going over all of the major lobbying signings and all of the major congressional and executive branch stock transactions and stuff that have gone on over the previous week, just to keep everybody up to date on who's making what kind of money, who's playing the market, what companies are officials buying into or getting out of, which could also just be just as important. So yeah, I feel like indie media, had like a void when it comes to that type of reporting. And again, a lot of stuff again is not quite worthy of an entire massive essay or 1,000-word breakdown, but some of it may take a little bit more than 280 characters to explain. So now with Politify, all of those stories have a home. And give them a little bit of context. So yeah, that's the idea, right? Is just to make campaign finance journalism cool, and because it can be a little bit in the minutia sometimes whenever you're talking about all of these just numbers upon numbers, and it can, a lot of people just check out once they start hearing a certain amount. So I want to make that. I mean, it's important. At least I feel it's very important. So I want to kind of give it the space that it deserves, or I feel like that it needs. And so yeah, that's what it's all about, man.
Yeah, and it is cool. It is cool. Like in the newsletter, you have, some of them have multiple paragraphs, some of them can just have like one paragraph, but it's all broken down there. And I highly recommend people to, check out Robbie's work. I want to remind people, I made a community post talking about how I'm off Twitter right now. I've been banned. I was talking about the vaccine. So please share this video out far and wide if you have not yet shared it. Get the word out. I'll make a video discussing, what happened, and talk more about censorship. So yeah, let's start with one of the stories that you've discussed in your this week in Politify, which is Turning Point USA. And you discuss some of the tax documents there. So this is a conservative think tank that was started by Charlie Kirk, and I'm sure some people know who Charlie Kirk is. But for people who don't know, he's a radio talk show host and he's a political YouTube commentator. He's a Trump loyalist. He raised millions of dollars from unknown donors, and Robbie Jaeger breaks down the details of that in his Substack. So, what can you tell us about that here on this show about your findings, Robbie?
I mean, look, well, I also reposted just specifically that story. I was also on Rockfin. You know, I reposted it a couple of days later because I do feel like everybody should be able to read it. You know, so it launched in Politify, but no, I mean, this is kind of this is a scoop. I mean, quite honestly, nobody else has reported any of this yet. As far as I know, we over here at MCSC are the first ones to actually even report, or for all I could know of, even look at Turning Point USA's 2020 tax documents. And yes, I mean, Charlie Kirk is the guy. He's he's the guy that most recently, you know, basically said he was one of the Juneteenth attackers, basically saying, oh, you know, since Juneteenth is now a holiday, it diminishes 4th of July or whatever kind of nonsense the conservative talking point was to there. He's a hardcore Trump loyalist, as you mentioned. He's, in my opinion, he is the king of the whataboutism. Nobody can
more than Ben Shapiro. Oh my god!
Oh no, yeah, absolutely better than Ben Shapiro. No, Charlie Kirk is the king of whataboutism. Yeah, and he's just an overall just a goon. But but regardless of that, he's made quite a bit of a name of himself, especially because of his social media presence for one, and his massive whataboutisms that he spouts on there, and nothing gets retweets like whataboutisms in this day and age. But he's also he has the think tank, right? The Turning Point USA. He says it's about reaching out to students and teaching them about the free economy. What does it tax documents actually say? Sorry, I've got my phone out here. Turning Point USA educates students about the importance of fiscal responsibility, free markets, and capitalism through nonpartisan debate, dialogue, and discussion. Nonpartisan debate, dialogue, and discussion. Turning Point USA believes that every young person can be enlightened to true free market values. Okay, so I mean, they're already bullshitting you, from out the gate, because there's nothing nonpartisan about Turning Point USA. It's definitely partisan. They definitely hate Democrats. But so what's the big deal? What's the tax documents have to say? What's the juice? So their fiscal year runs from the beginning of July through June the next year. Excuse me. So these numbers run from July 2019 to through the end of June of 2020, and during that time they raised just a few hundred thousand off of $40 million. So about $39,345,000 to be exact, which is about $17 million more than they had made the previous year. Which, is pretty daggone good. Especially for an organization that's only been around like 5 years. You're already pulling in 40 million a year. That's pretty good. But also the fact that, of course, like most of these think tanks, nobody has nobody knows who the actual donors are, because of course they don't disclose them. And even though we've done some digging, we still haven't been able to actually put any names on these donors, or any significant names on any significant donors so far. But we do know that $10 million out of the roughly 40 that they brought in that time frame came from a winter 2019 fundraiser that they actually held at Mar-a-Lago that featured none other than Donald Trump Jr., of course, his partner at the time. I'm not sure if they're still together, Kimberly Guilfoyle. And they also a few other, Mark Levin, I believe, was there, and a few other, conservative commentators and internet personalities. Brought in $10 million and I think $10.5 million in one night. from, again, anonymous sources, so we don't know. I've been able to track down another 1.4 million coming from the Charles Schwab Charitable Fund, which is a donor advised fund. Basically, you give them your money. It counts as a donation to you, but what you're really doing is putting it in kind of a savings account. And you don't even have to donate to a charity that year. It could sit for years until you decide that you know where you actually want to donate your money. So it's kind of a pooled investment, you know. So there's really and they never have to disclose their donors, so we don't know where that other 1.4 million came from. But other than that, we don't really know who's funding, or at least we don't really know who funded them last year. We just know that they just made a shit ton of more money than they did the year before, and that it came from pushing that connection to Trump, you know, that proximity to Trump at Mar-a-Lago with Trump Jr. You know, it's easy to see how you bring the big donors out for that.
Yeah, and they claim to be nonpartisan, right? So what they mean is like that they should be receiving donations or have money ties with corporations that are Republican simps or Democrat simps. But then, like you mentioned, like that they have ties to PragerU, Colorado Christian University, American Conservative Union. Like these are just Republican simping corporations, right?
Oh, so what's so great about this in particular is that, you know, we've gone over where the money came from, right? Or what we know. So now we get to where did Turning Point spend their money? And they spent roughly, what's to say, just under $17 million, or maybe it was just over. So yeah, they just spent just over $17 million, 17.25 million. But $15 million of that in straight cash was sent to their own endowment fund, right? Turning Point USA has a separate nonprofit entity that is just basically an investment vehicle for Turning Point USA. It's their endowment, right? The description of the endowment is, you know, I'm paraphrasing, is basically to ensure the long-term, the long-term financial stability and vitality of Turning Point USA. So basically, they take this money, they invest it in the market, they buy land, they buy buildings, stuff like that. Turning Point USA's headquarters in Arizona is the deed or the registry, you know, has Turning Point's endowment as the actual owner of the property. So that's what that all kind of does. $15 million just boom cashed over there. They also sent them like $1.74 million, I think, in, or 1.64, something like that, in commercial real estate. So almost all the money that they gave out, like nearly all of it, went straight to themselves. Basically, they took, you know, they just basically invested all this money into themselves. Not very much money went anywhere else, especially to, like they said, they're trying to reach students. I think they spent just over $200,000 on student related activities, as far as like programs that they themselves ran. They spent $150,000 on PragerU, which was their like, next to themselves, with the billions of dollars that they transferred themselves. The $150K to PragerU was the biggest grant they made to any other organizations. And then, of course, the other two that you mentioned were in like the $20,000 range. So yeah, I mean, that's kind of when people talk about the grift. I mean, you raise 40 million and you pay yourself 17. You you know, you Charlie Kirk himself made $327,000 last year to talk the crazy shit that he talks. You know, it's quite insane. But what's even better about this is that we kind of get this again, the uniparty thing here. You know, for a few years it was like you saw trolls online, right? You saw the bot armies. You know, the go-to was, oh, you work for David Brock now, or you must be one of those correct the record trolls. Well, it turns out, and now this part we already knew, or it had already been reported by the Washington Post. I feel like October of last year, they had reported that Turning Point was linked to a company called Rally Forge, which apparently had been running fake accounts on both Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. in kind of coordinated fashion that were all kind of spitting Turning Point USA talking points like verbatim. And then it turns out that Turning Point was actually paying them to do that, and like 500 and some odd accounts from across all those social media platforms were all banned for deceptive practices and misleading, and basically all the happy horse shit that that tech companies like suspending for. But there literally was a coordinated effort that Turning Point was paying for, and we knew from the FEC records that their PAC, Turning Point Action, had spent a roughly like just under $1 million during the 2020 election at that company in question, Rally Forge. And then we found from these tax records that Turning Point's nonprofit paid that same company $531,000 during that same time span. So again, that's the misinformation machine at work. And it's showing you right there. I mean, they're spending nonprofit dollars on basically lying to you online, but they're not just coming out and say, hey, this is paid for by Turning Point USA, or saying, no, my name is, John Smith. This is me. This is what I really believe, but I'm not disclosing to you that, hey, I'm actually being paid basically by a proxy of Turning Point to say this type of stuff, which that's how dark money. That's one of the many ways dark money influences our election, and people kind of just look at it as like dark money for super PACs and stuff like that. But I mean, nowadays super PACs are more than just the very annoying constant commercials you see in the run up to election season. Now it could be one of your favorite followers. I mean, or one of the people you follow that you really agree with could be on the payroll of a super PAC, and you may never know, or be on the payroll of some dark money organization, and you may never know. I mean, because that's the whole point. It's subversion.
It's so creepy also how they're focusing on students. Charlie Kirk is also like his audience is going to be a lot of millennials and Gen Zers, right? So they're trying to mold this new generation into being these these people that believe these State Department talking points, that believe in these China fear mongering messages, right? I just wanted to point that out. And also, I just want to make it clear to everybody: is it individuals or is it corporations that are donating to Turning Point USA?
It's a good guess. I mean, they don't give you any names. I mean, it could have just been one person that fundraiser in Mar-a-Lago put down 10 million. We saw it happen multiple times during the election, not at Turning Point, but in other organizations. There are people in DC circles that definitely have the ammo to slap 10 million on the table at any given point in time. But again, they don't disclose anything. I've been cross-referencing other publicly available tax returns from the same time period. And like I said, other than the 1.4 million, that's also anonymous and will always be, it'll stay that way. We haven't found anything significant from anywhere else. And when I say significant, I mean, like, you're talking about a $40 million organization. I'm looking for a donation of at least 6 figures, or you give me like $250,000 or more. I mean, I'm not going to report on you made 40 million if I find 10 grand from somewhere. I'm looking for where the big money is, or at least the considerable money is. So as far as that goes, we haven't really found anything notable as far as where the money is actually coming from. There has been past reports done where you can kind of see, I think somebody found 43% of their donors between 2014 and 2018, but that's not going to do you much good now. There are still some tax returns that could clue us in. We're still waiting on the returns from a few different conservative organizations. We're still waiting on the returns from the largest donor advised for fund in the country that moves nearly $10 billion through it every single year. That's the Fidelity Charitable Fund. Look, their last year's tax returns, they gave $83 million to one of the largest liberal dark money outfits out there. So look, these donor advised funds, quite honestly, are the next frontier in dark money. That I mean, it's already here. It's not really the next frontier. It's just the frontier that people have. It's the new avenue because it gets around literally every piece of legislation that would force you to disclose your identity, even if they would have passed For the People Act. Donor advised funds would still have been good to go. They wouldn't have had to. They still wouldn't have had to say anything. So that they're like, it's the ultimate loophole. But we're still waiting on that to come in because we may still yet see some big numbers out of there. But the thing about the tax, here's the thing about tax reporting with dark money stuff. It's almost impossible without a source that will actually dig through the personal records, the private records of a group and send you the information. It's almost impossible to find individuals who donate. And that includes corporations because that's how the government sees corporations as individuals. Though it's the easier part is when it's another nonprofit donating to the group, because whereas nonprofits, even dark money groups, don't have to disclose where their money comes from, almost every nonprofit has to disclose where they spent their money. So you can cross-reference certain tax returns and say, okay, well, I might not have been able, you might not have told me where you got your money, but this nonprofit's tax return said that they donated $1 million to you. So I just found $1 million in dark money that we can check off the list, right? We put a light on that. Sometimes it's easier, right, when you're getting a lot of institutional donations. But it looks like in Turning Point's case, most of their money is coming from individuals, in which case it'll remain secret forever unless somebody decides to blow the whistle on where it came from.
Mm. I just want to remind people this is a void that Robbie is filling here. This follow the money kind of reporting that we really need. And if you see the common, the trends, these patterns, a lot of the same kind of people pop up. Let's say similar institutions. So it all leads to like sometimes we can't disclose who exactly the individuals are, but it's more than likely it's going to be the elite class. Right, that's tied behind this, and they want their agendas to be, indoctrinated, like their messaging to be indoctrinated into the people, and that's why they spend so much, on these nonprofits. Like Robbie's done a lot of work on Sunrise and Colonial Pipeline, which we're going to get into something that's related to that here, which is something that was in the news recently that happened in the Gulf of Mexico. So our government said that Colonial Pipeline could produce a fire like the fire in the Gulf of Mexico that was set by underwater pipelines, right, Robbie, which we're about to see here?
It said that it could produce a catastrophic event, and honestly, like if there's a leak, there's a chance for a fire. So just imagine a fire starting like that in the middle of a wooded nature preserve. So I mean, yeah, the federal government has condemned the entirety of the Colonial Pipeline as an imminent threat, basically, to both public and environmental safety, with the possibility for catastrophic happenings, occurring at any moment in time.
Yeah, I just want to show people what's going on here.
Sure.
Yeah. So I don't know if you can see my screen right now. Yeah. It's truly startling. Like this is like stuff that you see in a science fiction movie. Like it's like a fire whirlpool, right? But thankfully, we have our savior Joe Biden, right? But I just want to show here this video received like 20 million views as of this morning. This was published at 4:21 a.m. And like I you would think that there would be more people, calling out Joe Biden about this. This is. And then I come across this article here, which is published in the same day today. It says President Biden's climate plan is more revolution than transition. That's complete BS. Because look at this, guys. Biden administration backs Alaska oil drilling project approved under Trump. Mm-hmm. He's continuing the same thing.
Oh,
the New York Times reported. Biden administration backs oil sands pipeline project. So line 3, right? Mm-hmm. There's indigenous people out there protesting. Dakota Access Pipeline. Biden's U.S. Army Corps formally opposes Dakota Access Pipeline shutdown. So how is that more revolution? It seems like it's more of the same, right, Robbie?
It's exactly more of the same, which is, I mean, look, I mean, people that were in the loop knew. I mean, hell, yeah, just knowing before Biden ever opened his mouth on the subject of oil and gas or the environment, even one time during this campaign, everybody knew. I mean, he's the most conservative Democrat in the race. His opinions on the oil and gas industry are going to be the same opinions that he had rooted, back in the 80s and 90s. He's a conservative. I mean, Biden is a conservative, and it's ridiculous, anyway, that anybody would really try to argue otherwise. He's a Dixiecrat. He might be from Delaware, but he's basically a Dixiecrat. And that means that you're never going to get him to go any farther right than taking the easy win on the environment. The easy win was Keystone, right? But this is also the same man that spent most of the debates and even got his vice president to come out on the debates and basically spend a lot of time basically trying to ease the fears of worried anti-Trump Republicans by telling them over and over again, no, I'm not going to end fracking. We're not going to ban fracking. Don't worry, Republicans. You can still vote for me because we're not going to ban fracking. We're going to continue the same old. And as far as the rest of his climate policy has basically been the same thing. I mean, yeah, Keystone XL was not operational. And it was also a highly contentious political football. So what do? It's not functioning. You just go ahead and kill it. You take your easy points. It's a free throw. You got to make your free throws, right? Dakota Access is functional. And what, I don't care what people think, man. It's a pain in the ass for politicians to try to get away, or the government trying to get away with shutting down an active pipeline. And just lo and behold, he wouldn't do it. The Army, his government, his administration is backing DAPL. You mentioned the oil sands pipeline. You mentioned line 3. This is not surprising. There's the Penn East pipeline in New Jersey. His department, Biden's DOJ, basically just took the exact same stance that the Trump DOJ took, basically telling the state of New Jersey that this fucking pipeline company does indeed have the right to just use eminent domain to run a pipeline through your state. Yeah, which I don't understand. It's like, okay, this is a private company that you are giving the right to take state property just because they want it. And of course, that's what the Biden DOJ is totally for that. Look, this is what we expected. I mean, look, it's almost like, Biden is looking these things in the face. He looked everybody in the face, and we got Sunrise Movement, as you mentioned. They're out there in front of the White House or wherever they were doing their little demonstration the other day. And I think I saw them on Twitter. They were saying that, like, you've been ignoring us. We tried to tell you that we were serious, and you've been ignoring us. And I was thinking to myself, you guys told all of your hundreds of thousands, millions of people that follow you, you told them all to vote for Biden without any kind of consolation from Biden. He didn't give you anything. He made you no promises. He told you nothing. You just basically gave away all of your vote and all of your leverage for nothing, and you told everybody else to do the same. And so you were going, oh, we'll push him back. Well, we'll push him left. How many times have you heard that, Franco?
Yeah,
we'll push Biden left.
Yeah, absolutely
Sunrise,
ridiculous.
You know who came up with that, right? It was like Sunrise.
Who was the first person? Oh, they're the ones that started saying that. I didn't know that. I thought it was just like
it was either them or the AOs. Well, that's where the talking points were disseminated through.
Oh, okay.
Mean, because
so they were the source, and then they repeated it to a larger mass of people.
Oh yeah, because it's kind of like, oh well, how do we convince people to vote for somebody that they know to be practically a Republican in blue paint? How do we convince so-called progressive voters to to vote for that. We have to normalize them, and we have to make it seem like, you know, that we have some kind of relationship with the person that we're telling you to vote for. Because why else would it be like, hey, look, guys, just trust me, we'll push him left. Like you have some kind of access, which they might have, you know, as one of the people that actually just recently left out of there in a storm of controversy said, you know, you're not going to change the world through your weekly White House Zoom meeting. So I mean, maybe you've got access to the White House via a weekly Zoom meeting now, but what good are you really doing? With nothing, because that's what irritated me, man. And this is my thing about Sunrise and a bunch of all these other groups that kind of, you know, talked about you know, grassroots movements and stuff. Like if you really wanted to start a grassroots movement, you wouldn't have supported Democrats. You would have thrown all of that weight and money and all of that organizational power that you have. You'd have thrown it behind a third party and truly build something from the ground up. But that's not what happened. You know, they got a bunch of money and then they started pushing Democrats, and now they are, you know, they're reaping the benefits of that. But they still go out there and do this theatrics about, you know, oh, Biden's ignoring us. Well, because he doesn't care about you. You're not relevant to Joe Biden. He never were. If he even bothered to speak to you at all, it was so you could give him an endorsement. And then since you didn't ask anything in return for it, you know, he's just going to be like, all right, cool. Thanks for that. Now I'm going to just go wherever else I have to go to get another vote. I mean, that's what he did. And, you know, so, I mean, the climate, the only thing that we're going to make any kind of moves in climate wise, I'm not even going to say climate wise. I'm going to say green energy wise, is going to be, you know, there's going to be the push for, you know, more electric stuff. I do believe you're going to start to see that just because there's so many liberal mega donors and actual, you know, people in the administration that have ties to these, you know, startup or these relatively new electric vehicle battery manufacturers and stuff like that. You probably will start seeing a push for that. But other than that, when it comes to the oil industry, you're going to see a lot of people trying to freak out about it, because I feel like a lot of these organizations and trade associations, like everybody that represents big oil, like they have to have a boogeyman, and their understanding of, you know, what a socialist is like completely fucked. Like you see, you see people calling AOC. Yeah,
I was gonna say, like, which tying it back to like PragerU and all those other think tanks, like they push out this fear mongering about what socialism is.
Right. Yeah, and they're wrong. Hell, just for the fact that they try to paint AOC as a socialist, which shows well, nobody in the American Congress is a socialist.
Yeah,
I mean, because there is no left-wing party in America. There's just two right-wing parties. Because like, again, I guess that's what I was trying to say, is that by and large, in general, definitely not the people smart enough to be watching this show, not at all. But in general, I feel like Americans' concept of left and right just is not accurate at all. You know, the Americans' Overton window is so far to the right that they don't really know what a leftist really would want, or like a leftist politician. They wouldn't know one if they saw one. They'd probably just, you know, they would really like it would freak them out if there was actually leftist politicians in America, because we've never seen one, I don't think. And, you know, I'm that statement might get me in trouble, but, you know, but you get the idea.
Yeah.
You know, what we consider a leftist politician, a progressive, I mean, that's softball. That's, you know, compared to like 98% of the rest of the world that actually have, at least the parts of the world that actually have, you know, a left-wing agenda or left-wing parties that are actually, you know, left-wing.
If there ever was like a politician that was like truly left, like the mainstream media, everybody would be calling him an ultra leftist. Like the FBI would be on that person's ass because it has to be too revolutionary. I just want to show people this again.
The portal to hell.
The portal to hell. Well, about the portal to hell, which what says here, 20 million people have watched it as of this morning. Now it's even more. So things like this are getting attention. But like I showed you guys, there's idiots like this guy here that keep calling Joe Biden's climate plan revolutionary, which is obviously not. So when things like this go viral, and tell me if you agree with this, Robbie.
Okay.
People be telling people like in the comment sections and stuff, like some of our audience members, like people who read your work, people who watch this show, people who follow the MCSC network, should they be telling people in the comment section just abolish the fossil fuel industry, or is that too extreme, or is there a better strategy? What do you think?
Well, I mean, in game, that would be the perfect strategy, right? I mean, I'm not saying it's too extreme. I mean, you can't just walk in. I mean, look, you can just say, flip the switch, it's over. But in a realistic sense, you can't, right? Because we just have to, I mean, we really have to take into account that there's an entire global economy that has been built around the oil trade. You know, and that and a few other a few other precious natural resources. And if you were to if you were to just pull the lever on one, you know, we're going to get that cascading effect. And quite honestly, this is the subject that when I talk about, I have to put my ideals aside because they're just not, I mean, they sound like fantasy when I talk about the way the world actually is right now. Like ideally, like no new pipelines, no more oil drilling. Like why can't we find whatever happened to that push for a more, you know, a cleaner, sustainable fuel source? When I was growing up, you know, early 2000s, there was nothing but, you know, I feel like stories, articles after articles, you know, people were trying to find a way to, you know, run stuff off of corn oils, and you know, it was like it was everything. That was the next big thing, right? And then all of a sudden, it all just went away, probably because the oil and gas industry killed it all. And now, of course, we're onto electric things, which is fine, whatever. That's good. I hope, but I think it's a shame. Like, and I say that with all the intention of like every kind of emotion that word actually intends. I mean it. It's shameful that we are in 2021, and we have absolutely made no progress over the last 20 to 30 years in finding a clean, renewable energy source outside of electric vehicles, which we already have that. And just the fact that it's taken it so long to get from where they were 20 years ago to where they are now, that's shameful in and of itself as well. You know, look, I would wish that we could one day get to a system that is fossil fuel free, right? As it stands right now, it's so ingrained in this global capitalist society that we live in, that I don't see it happening anytime soon. It's just too much money. I mean, that's just the way that I look at it. I wish it was different, but unfortunately, that's just how it is. Unless there's some major breakthrough, because I mean, Franco, you know as well as I do, these people are not going to just start moving over to a different fuel source unless it's profitable. There's got to be money in it, and until they figure out a way to capitalize monetarily, more so than they're capitalizing on the oil trade, we're going to be sticking with oil as long as at least as long as those are the people that are, you know, paying for our politicians.
Yeah, so there's more steps that we need to take into consideration, and we need to also recognize that it's the capitalist system that's the problem. Because, like you were saying, if they move away from oil and then they just like move on to like electric energy, they're gonna overexploit the resources that's needed for that, like with lithium and cobalt, and obtain those resources via imperialism and exploiting people in other countries. Also, we need to consider how it's right now, the way that a lot of our cities are designed. Like I was watching the video that Marcellus put out in the MCSC network main YouTube channel about how the cities are set up so that you have to rely on cars. Like it's like things aren't so close to each other where you can use public transportation, because then like when you get off a bus, you have to walk so much to get to like where you need to get to. That's not how it is in Europe, and that's not how it is in like DC or other cities that are in the East Coast that were built earlier on in with the design that the European cities have. So we really need to get that message across too, and be like, okay, we need a better design for our cities so we can have better public transportation. Because right now, everybody like having a car is a necessity, especially in cities like LA, right?
I mean, yeah. I mean, look. I mean, I live outside of Raleigh, North Carolina. So, I mean, if you want to go anywhere, yeah, you need a car. And Raleigh is the biggest city near me, but I mean, in comparison to actual big cities, it's nothing at all. But even in Raleigh, there's like, obviously we've got buses, we've got Go Raleigh and Cat and all that, and they take you wherever you want to go. They're not electric, I don't think yet, but there's there's rentable electric scooters on like every corner. I mean, and Raleigh, like, again, like as a city, I mean, it's like the size of LA's butthole, probably. It's small. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But even we've got electric scooters that you can just pop pay for real quick and just yeep, and then down to the next one. And I mean, these are little small things that make quality of life a little bit better, and obviously are better for the environment. And I look, you're talking about LA for one, and their problem is like top down, like all the way from a federal level. Like their representation in Congress is ass. It has been for a very long time. State politics is a mess, as you can see with the Gavin Newsom being recalled, and you want to talk about money. That's that's where all the money's at right now. I was getting soaked up into that recall. But whenever you live in a state like that, that's so divided on a federal and state level, and has also got such a massive population, yeah, man, you got to be on your P's and Q's, and you got to get everybody on the same page, or else you're just going to have this complete meltdown. Like, because quite honestly, California is, for all the money and for all the, and I'm going to sound like a red state fuck here, but I'm going to go ahead and just say this because I had to put up with this shit during every election. When I'm told by Californians about how much more important they are and how they make all the money for everybody. And that's fine. You guys probably do make all the money, but why the fuck do you have so many homeless people if that's the case?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like you don't have it all figured out. And I'm not speaking to you specifically. I'm, just speaking in general terms. But, that's the thing, is that California is a mess. So why they haven't gotten, like, they should be the standard bearer for pretty much everything. I mean, shouldn't they?
Yeah, they should. Yeah, but then instead they're a reflection of what America is, right? Like you don't just see it in LA where they have record number of people who are living in tents. Like you see it in DC too, like here. Like outside the White House, you see people picking out garbage out of the trash. And then like Jorge Ramos has the nerve to like show somebody like in Venezuela eating out of the trash as if that's like the norm there in Venezuela. When you see that a lot more in the US.
Oh yeah, and in DC, what you saw eating out of the trash, that was probably just some access journalist trying to find trying to get a congressman's candy bar wrapper or something.
That's right.
Shout out Ryan Grimm. No. So no, but I mean, quite honestly, no, I mean, yeah. Look, this is the world we're living in, dude. Like, as long as, and this is why to follow the money, this is what really has screwed me up, follow the money wise. It's kind of like, I think that it's important journalism to do, but it also depresses the hell out of you, man. Like, once you really start seeing like the amount of money, like, Mike Bloomberg spent $1 billion on a campaign. Like, how many people that could have fed? He spent $1 billion of his own money on a campaign that lasted like 3 or 4 months, and people were out here starving. Like, just the amount of money, like, say the Open Society Foundations, like, you're spending like $400 million a year just from one of your nonprofits, and a lot of it's going to other nonprofits that you own. Like, what kind of good is that? Like $60 million from the 1630. Like, you start seeing all of this stuff, man. Like all of this wasted money spent on
Mhm.
fucking commercials and emails on Hulu, and like it's the most obnoxious thing in the world when you think about like these people have never been poor. Like, there's no
Mhm.
way. Like, there's no way you've ever been poor if you can drop $1 million on commercials. For a campaign you're not even running in. It's so out of touch and so disconnected from like people that are actually having to live like regular fucking people.
Mhm.
Um, that we, but that the game is so rigged. There's so much money being played against you. Like, there's almost no way to combat it. You just gotta know who your enemies are.
Yeah, and then they do favors for each other. Like Mike
Yeah.
Bloomberg spent all that money, and he also donated money to the DNC, and he was able to get on the debate stage, whereas Tulsi Gabbard couldn't get on all of them, and Mike Gravel, rest in peace, couldn't get on any of them, despite them meeting some of the requirements, like getting the donation threshold, but then not being able to make it toward make the requirements for the polls because it's not the ones that the DNC had selected. Like, oh no, those polls aren't good enough. But
Oh
then
yeah. Oh yeah.
they flip the rules for Mike Bloomberg.
Oh, that's always fun, right? Well, yeah, because you got to pay him off. I mean, Tulsi Gabbard doesn't have any money. Mike Bloomberg paid $1 billion on himself, and then after he dropped out 3 months later, he pledged like another 100-some million for Biden, which he delivered on eventually.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, he spent like another 100-some million dollars funding pro Biden super PACs after he dropped out. And that's just like, what is it with the DNC and like rehabilitating Republicans? I don't understand. Because that's what Bloomberg was for the majority of his career. I mean, quite honestly, Bloomberg will run when it comes to office. Bloomberg will run whatever party will take him. He just wants to run. I mean, he doesn't have a party moral. He's like, I'm just a rich dude and I want to stay a rich guy. You know what I mean? So I'm just gonna like, hey, Democrats like rich people, Republicans like rich people, at least party wise. So
Mm-hmm.
like, he's just one of those guys, and the Democrats just doesn't make any sense. None of this makes sense. Like, American
Not at
politics
all.
is a mess right now.
And like we were just talking about how they enrich themselves, right? And they invest their money for themselves so they can do things that destroy the planet.
Mm-hmm.
So you reported this on your Twitter. It said lobbying news: ExxonMobil has hired K Street powerhouse Brownstein Hyatt to lobby Congress on multiple issues. The team includes former Rep Ed Royce, and then you said attorneys, lobbyists at Brownstein Hyatt et al. Gave more than $1 million in the 2020 election, 53% to Dems, 46% to GOP. Like, you would think that they would give more to the Republicans, but no, they gave more money to the Democrats. So you want to talk a little bit more about that? Like, who exactly is this powerhouse Brownstein Hyatt?
Well, I mean, Brownstein Hyatt is probably top 5, maybe top 3 most, not only just like a large, like as far as size, the number of lobbyists that it employs, the number of clients that it has. It truly is a powerhouse on the lobbying scene. But nothing kind of demonstrates this constant thread that I've been pulling at for years now about the uniparty. Nothing really illustrates it better than this. Like the tweet that you just showed. Of course, like I said, Brownstein Hyatt's probably got like 200 some clients right now. So and there's a reason for that, obviously, because they're massive. They have a lot of really good lobbyists on their team. They get results, obviously. That's why they have the reputation that they do. And they've been around for a long time. So, but Exxon, again, you have to think, not to say that they don't ever hire outside help for lobbying, but a lot of these major companies definitely have their own internal lobbyists, right? They have their own government affairs, government relations departments is what they usually call them. And usually they keep a lot of their lobbying in-house. So whenever you see one reaching out, Exxon is no small potatoes, right? Especially in the oil and gas industry. They may not be what they used to be, but just on a name recognition, on like a clout scale, Exxon is still Exxon. So them reaching out to a firm like Brownstein is kind of eye-opening. Okay, like you guys are really trying to get your message across somewhere. And just so everybody knows, I know there was this recent story that came out about the activist for Greenpeace that recorded an Exxon lobbyist, basically admitting to undercutting climate legislation and funding shadow groups and stuff. This hiring of the lobbyist for Brownstein is actually predates that. Just because of the delay in how they get the information printed up on the website. So I just wanted to put that out there for anybody that had seen that and was thinking, oh, they're getting rid of their old lobbyists. They need some new lobbyists because these ones are fucking up. Not the time doesn't exactly match up on that. But the uniparty thing is perfect. Have some of the best example. I mean, last week's Politify, or my first Politify, I think it was almost been 2 weeks now. I did a quick little story about how, some of the biggest defense contractors were starting to slowly start spending some money in the political scape here as we're starting to ramp up the midterm cycle. And like Boeing was dropping like $100,000 a piece to the NRSC or the NRCC, the NRSC, and they gave $100,000 a piece to the DCCC, the DSCC. Lockheed Martin did the same, just on 15 grand, 30 grand a piece. They were evenly spreading their money around, right, to both the Democratic Party and the Republican Party. And that's what it looks like Brownstein Hyatt did in 2020 as well. Now, granted, these are from individuals that work for Brownstein, not PAC donations from Brownstein's PAC, because I'm not even sure if they actually have one. I'm pretty sure they do, but these were from individuals, and you saw it 53%. It's like of the 1.4 million, so just over 700 and some $1,000, right? Went to Democrats. And then, just under that, 46% went to Republicans. They spread this money out both sides of the aisle because, they need them. They need that consensus. They need to be friends with all of the people on the relevant committee, not just the people that they used to work with. So, I mean, this is how DC operates. It's not about what you want. What you want only matters whenever the person that can give you what you want needs your vote. Once you get that, once you give away your vote, you really give away the only currency that you have. And it's like paying for something up front when you haven't received the goods yet. It's like a wheat sale, right? The politician is the dude that says, yeah, give me your $20 now. I'll run and grab you your bud. And then you give him the $20 and then he runs to grab you your bud, but he never comes back. And if he comes back, how it is. He comes back with a 10 bag and tells you it's worth 20. Right. So, that's how politicians operate. And that's the best case scenario. So, I feel like that's what Biden did that better than, I feel like, well, Obama was pretty damn good at that. But Biden's old ass, he's a hustler, homie.
Yeah.
Like he hustles the shit out of y'all for those $2,000.
Makes you feel like, he sweet talks you, makes himself sound like he's like this really nice grandpa. He's like, oh, with this delicate voice. With
he whispers to you.
Oh God, yeah. Because I care about you, America. He did that on the debate stage. It was so gross.
No, he whispers because he thinks you're stupid, and he needs to slow it down.
It's so condescending and patronizing.
Yes, absolutely.
Especially when he refers to Latin Americans and Black people, and he's like, some of them just don't know how to use the technology. Like, do you know how to use technology? Freaking old head. One thing that I really appreciate about your work, and that everybody should appreciate, is that you don't discriminate on who you're going to expose, whether it's the Democrats, whether it's Republicans, whether it's people who call themselves progressive. Like you did your work on the Sunrise Movement, which paints themselves as this progressive organization, and here you are exposing some stuff that Paul Ryan did. Former speaker Paul Ryan said, tax filings by former Speaker Paul Ryan think tank American Idea Foundation pulled in about $8.5 million in donations for 2019, which was their first year. That's a lot of money for their first year. Over 7 million of that, 87% came from Ryan's own campaign / PAC funds. That's kind of cheating.
It seems like it.
Yeah. And then you said IIF, so American Idea Foundation, finished the year with over $8 million COH. So you want to talk a little bit more about that?
Sure thing. So I'm not sure. This was it was a story for like a hot second, and then it just disappeared. But late 2019, Paul Ryan started his own his own nonprofit, his own tax exempt organization, or whatever you want to call it, his own think tank called the American Idea Foundation. And it was basically just some Paul Ryan, stump speech bullshit, about how the American idea and shouldn't matter the circumstances of your birth, and about how your life turns out. And they're basically honestly, it sounded like they don't really describe what it is they do. They work with grassroots organizations to get them the type of recognition they deserve from federal representatives. It's really kind of an opaque way to describe it. They don't really describe too much of what they've done. And it's funny, a lot of these nonprofits are just saying, well, you get on their website and it's like about us, and it's like literally as long as one of my articles, and they don't tell you anything about themselves. It's uncanny. I wish I could write like that. I'd be a millionaire if I could write like that. But I mean, quite honestly, he it is kind of like cheating, except here's the thing, man. It's 100% legal what he did. And so before I get, the transfer of the money, the actual transfer of the money from his campaign to his nonprofit, that was actually first reported back in, I want to say, January of 2020, because this is because the nonprofit cycle is so far behind like real life. Like if your fiscal year ends at the end of December, like a normal year, like it ends December 31st, your taxes aren't due to the IRS more than likely until about November of the following year. So 2020, that's when you got to give it up to the IRS. And then the IRS usually doesn't have it published on their website until at least 6 months later than that, which is why we're here in June 2021, just now seeing the amount of money that Paul Ryan's think tank raised back in 2019. This is old money to them now. So January 2020, fantastic political finance reporter named Lachlan Marquet, who was at Daily Beast at the time. Now he's at Axios. But he's one of the few like mainstream like campaign finance reporters I would recommend following if that type of news actually resonates with you, because he does get some really good scoops and stuff. But regardless of that, yeah, turns out the $7.4 million that he transferred, we found out at MCSE by being the first ones to view the tax records, that was pretty much all that he got. And not only that, I mean, we were able to find like $250,000 came from, again, the Charles Schwab donor advised fund. That you start to see a trend, right? There's lots of great avenues to get your donation to your favorite organization through one of those and still keep your name off of it. So we saw that again with the American Idea Foundation. But yeah, most of the money came from his own campaigns and his leadership PAC. And what's even more, I'm not going to say shady. I mean, it is shady, but again, 100% legal, is that once that money was property of his think tank, it's their money now. They can use it how they see fit. And he put it directly into the stock market. So they have like $6.5 million worth of money in the market, at least at the end of 2019. And they had already made $150,000 in dividends off of that. I mean, sweet gig, right? Get a bunch of campaign money, retire from politics, open up a think tank, then put all the money in your think tank, and then deposit all that money into the market and just sit back and pay yourself You know what I mean?
Right.
Like I mean, now, okay, I should start by saying I actually don't think Ryan took a salary um, from from the foundation. So I will say that. I don't think he actually took a salary. And I'm not saying that there wasn't people that did take salaries. I just don't think Ryan was one of them. Which you see that. I mean, he's got enough money. I mean, he's a very wealthy person anyway, right? So yeah, I mean, look, Paul Ryan, keep an eye out on him. Like, I think he's going to try to stay away from politics for at least another 4 years. Just to give the Trump, I mean, he was obviously, him and Trump did not mesh, right?
Mm-hmm.
This next election is going to be a referendum on what the Republican Party thinks about Donald Trump. Because they're going to have a choice to make. They're going to either pick a Trump loyalist as a party to put all their put their eggs, you know, in that basket, or they're going to have to make a break and go another direction. And I don't think, you know, Paul Ryan would be an example of another direction, but I don't think that he would throw his hat into the ring so soon. You know, because quite honestly, Republicans are going to have a hard time in 2024 unless they run a really, really smart campaign and put their money behind a really smart choice for candidate. Because if it winds up being, because, you know, I've said this before in other programs, if Mike Pompeo is going to come out, whether or not it's true or not, he's going to come out and position himself. And he's going to proclaim himself as the Republican frontrunner. Whether or not that's actually true, he's going to say it and he's going to act like that until people start believing it. And now you've got Ron DeSantis, you know, again, like we're starting to get there. But, you know, as far as like, I mean, these are still pretty pro-Trump guys, right? Republican Party, I don't think I don't think the Trump story is going to age very well. Even though, like, yes, Russiagate was a total hoax and the impeachments were total bullshit, you know, and a waste of American taxpayer dollars and time, and basically stagnated our country for 4 years. The Democrats did. So, you know, look, there's that to be said. But again, Trump loyalism may sound cool right now because everything is still super hot from the previous election. I'm not sure if it'll be looked at the same way come election time 2024. And if the Republican Party run a pro-Trump nominee and lose, I think that'll be it for the Trumpism in the GOP. At least for, you know, you're always going to have your Marjorie Taylor Greenes and your Lauren Boeberts and stuff like that. Like you're always going to have your extremists in any party. I feel. I mean, except if you're a Democratic Party, you just only have extremists in rhetoric, not actually in action. But that's a discussion for another day. But you know, I feel like if the GOP run a pro-Trump like a Mike Pompeo loses, then I think that's when you start seeing talk about Paul Ryan coming back. The comeback of Paul Ryan for 2028. Because, you know, it'll be like, hey, we tried the Trump thing. It didn't work. So now let's go back to me because
like
I was
a traditional
so cool.
thing, right?
Well, I mean, you look. I mean, Paul Ryan for a while now, you know, or for a while there, you know, his reputation is, thanks to the Trump years, is nowhere. He has nowhere close to the support that he did. But you know, during those years where he was, you know, especially during the run with Romney, he was being put up on this pedestal as like the future of the Republican Party, like he was their golden boy for the future. And then the Trump administration happened and it just all fell apart for him. So now he's kind of got to rebuild his reputation with Republicans, and it's going to take a while. So I mean, that's why that's what the AIF really is. It's you know, as Lachlan mentioned in his article, it's his rehabilitation project. He's going to stay out of the eye, but still be involved behind the scenes. He just won't have to do press conferences anymore. But Paul Ryan is definitely still very much a player in today's DC. And depending, like I said, on how 2024 goes, he might even, you know, his biggest play might still be yet to come. It just really all depends.
Yeah, and they might just settle for that too, because of how just the Republicans just detest Kamala Harris.
Yeah,
I don't know if it's going to be Joe Biden that they're going to be running against. It might be
that's
Kamala
true.
Harris.
I mean,
and
we don't
they'll just
know.
be willing to put up with that.
I would
Like
also
what?
say, watch out for Tim Scott if
Hmm.
you're a Republican. I mean, I don't think I'm going to use air quotes when I say ready, right? I don't think he's ready, right? Or at least that the Republican Party doesn't think he's ready to be that guy yet. But yeah, they want to make a star out of Tim Scott. You can see, and you know, that's a name that I look if you're a GOPer, you know, and people ask, well, why does it matter? Why do I care? Well, because you have to. I mean, it's good to know what to expect here. I mean, you're sitting here. If you're a Democrat, you know, you're practically going to have one or two choices, right? You're going to do. It's either going to be Biden or it's going to be Harris. You know, it's still really early. I mean, look, because this first year of Biden is not even over yet, and it feels like it's been an eternity. And so I can only imagine how it feels like to Biden. You know what I mean? So I think that, you know, the possibility is always up there that Biden decides not to run for a second term. You know, and he might anyway, but, you know, who knows really? But I mean, your choices are pretty much going to be Biden or Harris. But if you're a Republican, you look, you got to find some kind of strategy here, or else you're just going to get smashed for decades, you know, and that may be important to people that want to make you think that's important on Twitter, for people like us, but you know, Democratic control, Republican control. I mean, what's changed? Not much, right? You know, but I mean, there's going to be lots of money going around here very, very soon. The midterms are going to be super expensive. I know we always say that because they always are. But this next election, this next presidential election is going to be insane, man. I'm not looking forward to it.
Yeah, I'm not looking forward to it either. But this next topic, though, I'm sure you're gonna love, because the feeling of being vindicated is just I just love it. Like I'm sure you probably love it too, because you've been on this for a few years now, and I gotta say the person who helped me open up to some of this corruption initially was Nico House, and then through him I found you. And like I'm bringing this up because this is a really big topic right now, and I want people to know, like the work that you've done, you know, for a few years now when it comes to TYT. So finally, Robbie, since you know a lot of our audience members are invested in the unmasking of TYT, you know, there's different people that are in different parts of this path towards, you know, everything that's going on, and like being aware of everything that's going on. With everything that's unfolding, you know, this started with the smearing of Jimmy Dore and Aaron Mate. You've shown evidence about who funds TYT's network, which doesn't just include Hillary Clinton's surrogate, Jeffrey Katzenberg. Right. It also includes people like Sean Colo and Alan Patrikoff. So you want to let the audience know who they are and more about this. And I'll pull up the article right here to show everybody. This is back in 2019.
Yeah, we're
Robbie
throwing
Jaeger.
It back. It's almost 2 years ago when I wrote this. Almost 2 years. This was back when I was, you know, just kind of getting started. This was the article. Then, you know, this was during the time I was writing like a 10-minute read on Medium. Jesus Christ. Anyway, sorry guys. God damn. But no, okay. So this article really, I mean, because I get skeptical. Obviously, back then, especially, but even now, even more so now, I get skeptical about outlets, people that are in the information business, because that's what it is. It's a business, it's the information business. And I get skeptical whenever they talk about how independent they are. Like, oh, really? Because nobody in this space, well, I'm going to say almost nobody in this space is truly independent. And, you know, and look, a lot of times they are, sometimes they're not, and this is one of those times where it just they're not. You know, I'm not the one that broke the news on the Katzenberg deal. That was something that had been previously reported. The Buddy Roemer deal was obviously news when it happened. And I was glad that I wasn't, you know, I was able to actually take time and actually just do this. And like nobody knew I was researching any of this. Like was no pressure. So I took forever and got really meticulous with it. And it wound up being like one of the most read articles I've ever written. Because I think that it wound up being proven right. And that's why I keep getting notifications about this article being shared here 2 years later. Is because, I mean, yes, look, all this is going on right now. Look, the conversation really started ramping up again about TYT, about the forced to vote thing, right? A few months ago. I mean, because quite honestly, this is all old news to me. You know what I mean? Like, this was stuff that I wrote about in August. It was hot shit for a few minutes. And then, you know, I moved on to do other stuff. And so now with the Jimmy versus TYT, starting with forced to vote, and then yes, more recently with this, just the outright smearing of Jimmy and Aaron Mate by the Young Turks. I think it's really gotten that stuff. And but Jimmy's been referencing my article on his show for, whether he maybe like subconsciously, but anytime you talk about like the Katzenbergs plus the 3L Capital plus the 3L Capital belonging to Sean Colo, who's just he was just some dude, a business guy who got like a pretty big loan from Goldman Sachs, and he started himself a business and then grew that business into a bigger business, had help, and now he's a multimillionaire. Now I mean, well, he was actually the lead investor on the Young Turks. Like Katzenberg got all of the shine because Katzenberg is Jeffrey Katzenberg. He's the Obama / Hillary Clinton super donor. He's the DreamWorks guy, right? He's the guy that almost ruined Toy Story. So like he's that guy. I watched him get hit like last NBA season. I saw him get hit in the head with a basketball or some shit, and it was one of the best things I ever saw in my life. But I'm digressing really hard right now. But then of course Sean Colo, right, this upstart entrepreneur, $10 million from a Goldman Sachs loan, starts something called Leaf Group, grows that, makes a lot of money off of that, and then basically turns that money into 3L Capital, which is an investment vehicle. Basically, it's just an investment firm for him to invest money in startups, like the Young Turks when they need money. And Sean Colo became a member of his board, or TYT's board after that. Sean Colo's 3L Capital actually also, their latest investment was just last year, and that was in a company called Relativity Space, which 3D prints rockets, as a matter of fact, space rockets, right? So, and also our new NASA director, former Senator Bill Nelson, just left his post as like one of the board members of Relativity Space. So now one of TYT's board member, I can play 6 degrees here all day with all this useless knowledge that I have, but one of TYT's board members, basically has 2 degrees away from the director of NASA. So that's how small a world it is, though, quite honestly. But then of course you mentioned Alan Patrikoff. Alan Patrikoff is the owner of Graycroft. Oh gosh, I always get Greylock and Graycroft confused. I think it's Graycroft is the name of the firm that he is in charge of, and they also manage a significant portion of Senator Dianne Feinstein's wealth. She actually, I think, has some equity in the company herself. Patrikoff, again, used to visit Bill Clinton in the White House back when he was president. He's old money, right? He's old Clinton DNC money. And he threw plenty of money behind Clinton during the 2016 election as well. So, it wasn't just Katzenberg. It was a culmination of Katzenberg and Patrikoff. And then you've got this new money upstart guy that nobody knows who he is. And quite honestly, Colo has kept a pretty low profile. He's got some pretty cringy tweets. I'll just say that. I've reported on one. I would quote it, but I don't want to misquote it. So I'm not going to. But is questionable, man. But regardless of that, you know, you don't really know his motives because he's kept his money politically pretty close to the vest. He doesn't really donate that often, right? But the other guys, yeah, definitely track records of, you know, definitely have track records of supporting establishment Democrats with big money, which is why this was such a big problem. And also the fact that, you know, you cannot call yourself independent if you are taking millions of dollars from establishment mega donors, whether they be Democrat or Republican. I don't care if I told them that there was no strings attached, or I told them behind closed doors that there was no editorial control or nothing like that. I don't believe you. And why should I? I mean, quite honestly, because you can't prove it. And even if you even like, you know, somebody recently said that, you know, that you can't really point to any point after the money was taken to where they've moved to the right. I don't personally agree with that, but I feel like taking the money itself was a move to the right.
Yeah.
And then also the fact that right after you took that money, you took more money from people that actually, like, your actual viewers. You raised a bunch of money for something that never happened. Or no, you raised a bunch of money for journalists that, like, none of them are there anymore. Like, I think Jordan and Michael Tracy were a couple of those that were hired off of off of viewer donations, and then subsequently, like, fired within like a year or two. You know, but even then, Franco, like, even then, TYT had proven that their viewers were more than welcome, or that were more than ready to support them monetarily.
Yeah, they were.
I mean, all they had to do was ask, and their viewers would have footed the bill for them, no problem. I'm not sure they could have gotten 20 mil out of them, and, like, you know, but they've shown the ability to be able to raise multiple millions of dollars from their viewers when they need it. I just don't understand. I'll never understand, but maybe because I'm a broke boy. But, like, honestly, like, I'll never understand, you know, that reasoning. If you really are independent, and that's what is so important to me about, because I will never take corporate money or dark money from any. And, like, even if you're some billionaire, I don't care if, you know, you've been donating to Bernie Sanders or whatever, DSA. I don't care, whatever it is that I just can't take that, because it's an optics thing, and you have to be able to read the room. Like, especially if you're hanging your entire reputation off of being the home of progressives and, like, the quintessential independent media outlet. And then to do that, and then to try to justify it afterwards, you look crazy. You know what I mean? And you look like frauds. And I've been trying to tell people that for years now, literally. And now, you know, because of, I mean, honestly, like, what they did to Jimmy was just stupid. It was stupid. And it was basically like, I mean, I hate to use this played out expression with the mask off thing, but that's what that was, 100%.
Everything that they did backfired so bad. Like, any attempt that they try to do with to hit Jimmy Dore, it backfired. The worst one was when Jimmy, like, when Anna tried to blackmail Jimmy, and then Jimmy just showed all this footage of Anna and Cenk being misogynist and releasing, like, revenge porn and pornography, like, say, and like leaked photos of celebrities, which they could sue TYT for, and they're like, oh, just go to our website and you'll see this. But you would think that, like you said, like, these you know, progressives, quote unquote, like, they would be fighting authority and be challenging these people, but then they're taking money from them. It's similar to how Charlie Kirk is taking money for his what's it, Trust America, what is it,
Turning Point
Turning Point USA. It's like they these elites invest in these people that have young audience to indoctrinate them so that they can believe the message that our empire wants us to believe. And that's what they do. They repeat the message that the empire wants people to be indoctrinated with. And you said, like, the shift to the right was when they took the money.
I mean, that in and of
Like some of
itself.
it, yeah, some of it was already there. I think some of
Sure.
their shifting to the right was there. Like when Cenk was arguing for bombing Syria, when they had cringy
Hmm.
takes about Palestine, like trying to
Hmm.
both sides things back in 2014.
Well, look, even Kyle Kalinski's. I mean, I disagree with a lot of with some of what Kyle said recently. Even though, like, the fact that he was even felt compelled to have to comment, I feel was kind of ridiculous. But the fact that he did, I mean, you put your comments out there, so now we inevitably are going to have to discuss them. But I feel like one thing that he said, and like, I don't necessarily agree with the fact that they haven't moved right since the money, right? Because we've heard contrary stories about, even, I mean, Jimmy himself, and I know we have to consider the source, but even Jimmy himself has said, recently that whenever they took the meal, that he was approached by people, in production and basically was told, we're going to have to move towards the center now.
Mm-hmm.
It's just the way it's going to go. So, there's that point of contention. But he also said that he didn't have to move towards the right after he took the money because Jenks always had really shitty takes. And,
Yeah.
and if you really go back and listen, he's not all wrong on that. I mean, Jinx really had some really shitty takes for a really long time, and so that's why it can become hard, to pinpoint exactly when the shift happened. But it's inarguable now, regardless of whatever you think, that the shift has occurred. The shift has happened. And even just because you occasionally rip on Joe Manchin, so does MSNBC, right? I mean, like, that's
Yeah,
not
that's part of being a limited hangout, right? You're gonna say some truths
right.
here and there, but
And
you're still gonna repeat State Department talking points.
but I feel like look, some people that if you really care about progressive politics, then you really, really need to be focusing on the progressives, or the so-called progressives in the politics, because if they are co-opted, or if they are lying to you, you need to be the first ones to hold them accountable, not make excuses. That's why I cover, like, stuff that a lot of progressive media won't cover. They don't want to talk about Sunrise Movement and where they get their money from. You can't talk negatively about AOC or even Bernie Sanders still without, getting a whole bunch of backlash because of the cult of personality built around those individuals. But when in reality, like, that's the most important thing. Everybody else is going to be reporting about how shitty Republicans are, right? You're never going to get any shortage of stories about how bad Republicans are. It's going to be the front page headline of 90% of every publication that you read. Uh, you want to see, crap about what Democrats do. I mean, you're gonna have to look a bit further, right? You're gonna have to watch a bit of Fox News, Newsmax, ON, all the good stuff, right? And then if you want to find out what's going on with, like, progressive Democrats, like, you're not going to find that on a progressive station, which I don't understand. Like, progressive programs don't cover progressive politics or
Yeah,
progressive politicians. They covered their opponents. They're basically running campaigns
which
for
are all
progressive politicians.
which are controlled by the same people, right? So it's what these elite that are all well connected, and they fund the same people that
Mm-hmm.
appear to be on different sides because they're against each other in this culture war. But then, like, if you follow the money, if you see like these talent agencies that they're connected with, then you see like it's by design, to trick people into thinking that their enemy is their neighbor instead of the ruling class. And here's the other article that you wrote, which
Throwback.
Nico would wake me up about this when he would talk about the hypocrisy that Anna and Cenk would do when they'd criticize Tulsi Gabbard, but not Elizabeth Warren when she'd do this things that are even worse. So let's look at this list, because you expose these talent agencies, and how
Granted,
they're
this
all in the
list
same
is this list.
email list, right?
Granted, yeah, yeah, oh yeah. This was the first one I wrote. This was the first thing I ever wrote. And this wasn't ever like, okay, this, for one thing, the background on this story is kind of crazy. Just because, I was reading through a bunch of WikiLeaks. It's all based off of one of the emails that was found in the WikiLeaks trove, of a couple of, at the time, creative artist agency talent agents, and CAA being one of the largest if not the largest talent agency in the entire world. They're major. So, but I didn't know who they were. It was like, you've been asking Tulsi Gabbard has stepped down from the DNC. And correct me if I'm wrong, it was what, I can't remember, 2014, 2015?
When she was the vice chair, when she got
Yeah, when she
nominated.
stepped down from vice chair. I can't remember what
When she stepped down, it was in 2016 after
2016. Okay.
yeah.
All right. Well, she was obviously a congresswoman. At the time, she still needed to raise money. She apparently had been contacting, or somebody from her campaign had contacted CAA, asking for fundraising. And these two people in the email, Darnell Strong and Michael Kivez, basically said, you step down from the DNC. Hillary Clinton is going to be our nominee. P.S. This email was written months before the primary had been decided. So it was already a done deal. Even by this point, they had already made up their mind. But yes, so I was like, well, who are these guys? I feel like they're so powerful. Like, why would Tulsi Gabbard, or why would anybody care that these people are going to withhold money? And then I find out where they work, and then who their company represents. And the answer to that is, well, at least as of 2 years ago when this article was written, the answer to who they represent is pretty much everyone. Everyone you've ever heard of in liberal media, pretty much.
Yeah,
is,
celabrities,
politicians,
list. Pundits.
Yes.
Right, look at all this for CAA: Anderson Cooper, Alyssa Milano, Anna Navarro, Bill Maher, Chris Cuomo. Who else is here?
We got Dan
Joe
Pfeiffer,
Biden,
Donna Brazile, Jim Scudio,
Stephen Colbert.
Oh yeah, Colbert, Van Jones, Whoopi Goldberg, and then UTA, United Talent Agency. That was it's like there's like a big four. So think of CAA as your number one, and then UTA would be your number two. If there was a big four talent agencies, they're like 1A, 1A pretty much, but CAA is still the bigger one. But again, UTA, and these were all stuff that I found off of UTA's own website, right? So this was accurate information as of August 7th, 2019. These were all names that you could contact UTA, and they'd hook you up with, and these are for like speaking engagements and stuff like that. This is where this information came from. And you see there right up top, Anna Kasparian, Ben Shapiro, Cenk Uygur, Chuck Todd. Like, those are four names written right next to one another. Okay, Dana Bash, that's CNN, Don Lemon, John Kasich, obviously, boy, that's funny. Jake Tapper, Jim Acosta, the Dan Rather wannabe, Michael Moore, Poppy Harlow, Rod Rosenstein, and everybody, but Seth Meyers, Max Boot, who would have got Jeffrey Toobin, of course, Mr. Zoom himself,
Simone Sanders.
Yep, Simone Sanders, Valerie Biden's daughter. Yeah, it looks like, so who's who of mass media? That's how I put it. I mean, and that's not even getting into the sports section, because CAA represents lots of major athletes too. And basically the proposition, the whole thing behind the article, for one thing, it was just me basically thinking out loud. I never really thought that it would blow up to be what it became. I basically saw the email and found out where they worked, right? And figured out, like, I'm sure I was like way up, like I'm like 30, and I'm thinking to myself, how the hell did I not know about what the hell CAA was up until now? So I felt like kind of dumb, and I just started writing the list. Like, these are all the major people that I've been coming across on these speaker lists, and I of course meticulously looked through the entire list on both websites. And it was just like, I asked the question, if you wanted to coordinate a mass media campaign, talking points campaign, basically saying candidate X is bad, right? Let's just say that's all your statement was. If you wanted to coordinate a campaign like that, CAA would probably be one of the first people you'd want to call, because you can have just about one person, it seems like, on every single channel on television, especially in the news media spectrum, all saying the same thing all at the same time. I mean, now it's rare right? That you're going to get like a Ben Shapiro to jump on board, right? But if you've got someone on MSNBC and someone on CNN, you've got an athlete that you represent that's making a statement at a basketball game or a football game or both, you know, reaching literally millions upon millions of people across, you know, several different channels all at the same time, all saying the same message. You're gonna get results from that. I mean, because it's also the thing about is that you think everybody realizes that, hey, this talking head on CNN, this talking head on MSNBC, this player for this basketball team, this player for this baseball team, and this singer, right? Nobody's really thinking that they're all represented by the same talent agency. Nobody's thinking about that. All they're thinking about is that all of these different, really successful or slash smart people are supposedly all having the same idea, all individually, all at the same time, right? You know, so it makes you think, maybe I should think about this a little harder, right? Because there's no way that they're, you know, but, you know, behind the scenes, again, if you wanted to coordinate some kind of information or misinformation campaign, I can't think of a better way to do it than to have a bunch of high profile athletes and a bunch of high profile news anchors, you know, high profile celebrities in general, all having the same thought and saying the same thing simultaneously, while also simultaneously making it seem like it's all happening organically. But what if, and even if the same agent obviously isn't going to represent everybody on the same list, but who's to say that they're not all on the same email list? You know, all it would take was, you know, what, and look, I know this verges into, you know, classic conspiracy theory territory, but the 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 point I was trying to make is that whether or not it has happened, I mean, it's kind of relevant. I mean, you can kind of look through, I mean, you can look at corporate media and see like it's the same shit on every single channel. They're all saying the same thing. You know, they're all, you know, Hulu, even now, you know, streaming services, of course, athletes always usually buying into whatever the corporate narrative is in most cases, you know, or whatever the hot political narrative is in most cases. And now when you look at that, is it because of CAA? Who knows? Could it be? I mean, the foundation is there. I mean, it's possible. Whether it's happened or not is irrelevant. The fact of the matter is that it is possible. And we need to be aware of it, if nothing else. You know, just realize that there's an entire industry behind the curtain of what we see as far as news and, you know, in entertainment in general. I mean, hell, the Supreme Court just basically said that Maddow and Tucker are not news. They're performative.
I saw that.
So I mean, and there you go. I mean, that's the most watched two people on television. They're just actors, you know, and that's why they have talent agents.
Yeah. They keep the older generation, you know, the Gen Xers and the Boomers divided, and TYT and Charlie Kirk, Ben Shapiro all keep the Millennials and the Zoomers divided. So the moral of the story here that we can take away from this discussion with Robbie and I is that TYT operates just like corporate news, and at an individual level, they operate like celebrities, pundits, like people who are in the mainstream. So why would you get your information from these people? As what was already exposed, like we see them repeating State Department talking points.
Yeah, State Department talking points from Russiagate. I mean, this is from years ago, from the Russiagate thing, even before. But then you go, I mean, they're they're egomaniacs. And I feel like that's a huge problem, especially in our medium, man, is that there's too many huge, fragile egos, you know, in the space. And that's why I just don't have time for it. You know, honestly, you know, this is like, yeah, it feels good to be vindicated, but I'm so busy actually looking into what the fuck is our administration doing right now, that, you know, like Jimmy needs to get his shit straightened out. Where I understand you feel the need. You have to feel the need to clear your name and defend yourself against slander. Like I get it. I get it. Nobody, almost nobody in progressive media gets more heat than Jimmy Dore, but that's Jimmy's thing. Being provocative. Getting that heat. He's great at it, and he uses it to his advantage. But we need him focused. I mean, do you agree? I mean, I understand you've got to defend your name, but you've said what you've needed to say,
Yeah,
right?
now it's time to move on. I think
feel
he
like
said that too. He said, now I'll move on. I won't talk about it anymore.
And I feel like Mate needs
And
to do the same as
yeah,
well. I mean, because you've already dragged Kyle into the shit. I just feel like we're right now, indie media is in a tough spot. I'm not going to call it infighting because they're not all on our side. TYT's not on our side, and TYT's not independent. So I'm not going to call that infighting. But what it is doing is that it's taking Jimmy's very sharp attention span.
We need his
quick
voice.
wit. We need his voice on issues because we already look. And here's my thing: we already all know. At least I've known for a while, and a lot of people that on the network, and a lot of our followers and people that have been keeping up with us for the last couple of years, they already know TYT is garbage, right? TYT isn't pulling any kind of numbers to speak of. I mean, their viewership is in the toilet. I don't give a fuck what they say. You can look at their live streams while they're happening and see that they're in the toilet.
Yeah, their reputation couldn't be any more tarnished at this point.
It's terrible.
Now they just need to be treated as irrelevant.
Exactly. I mean, they have their day and they sold out. They proved they sold out, and they're gonna slander you. Like if you're somebody like Jimmy, they're gonna slander Jimmy. They're gonna slander Aaron Mate. They're gonna slander Gray Zone. Why? Because people view Gray Zone as more left than the TYT. And they're right, because Gray Zone has done far better reporting than TYT over the last, I don't know, what do you think? I mean, since the beginning of Gray
Zone.
Yeah, you know what I mean? Like
they're way better than Democracy Now! They're way better than Jacobin.
They've been killing the Gray Zone. People hate people stealing their shine. TYT had all the shine to themselves. They were, whenever they said something,
that's a big part of it too. Yeah,
I mean, think about it. Whenever TYT back in the day, when they said something, it was taken as this is the gold standard of the
especially in 2016, right?
Of progressive media. Like, progressive media has spoken. Right?
They had all that momentum in 2016 with Bernie Sanders.
Right.
I was like, oh shit, yeah, TYT said it.
Exactly. Right? And it was taken as gospel. And now, they don't have that anymore. Like, nobody's coming to them for their reporting. They're just commentators now. Gray Zone is reporting on stuff. Gray Zone is getting Aaron Mate gets way more attention than Jaeger does. And same goes for Max. Same goes for Ben. And look, they've earned that. TYT has earned their reputation now too, and they hate it because nobody believes or nobody takes what they say as the gospel anymore. People have found other authoritative, truly independent sources to get their news from outside of the Young Turks, and the Young Turks obviously can't stand it. Because that's where this is, to me, it's all rooted in jealousy. They're mad that Jimmy Dore and Gray Zone even are taking their piece of the pie away. And, they're just being ego driven, as they clearly are. They're soft and they're ego driven. It's something that they prove time and time again, because if you weren't soft and you weren't so ego driven, then you wouldn't feel the need to respond or get so salty and scream "fuck you" a million times to the screen to Aaron Mate. You wouldn't feel so salty about that, but you are salty because you're getting your ass whooped in the demographics that you used to control, and it doesn't feel good.
Yeah, and I just want to direct people who some people have discovered this corruption that TYT has recently.
Sure.
Some people are I get a lot of messages from people saying that they unsubscribe from Kyle Kalinske because they're not liking his takes of being too soft on AOC and the Squad. Like, there's people that are unsubscribing from these people that were more popular a couple of years ago. You can follow work that Robbie does. You can follow the work that Eva Bartlett and Vanessa Beeley, who do amazing work about what's happening in the Middle East. There's Corey Morningstar, who exposes the corruption within these NGOs that pretend to be like they're helping us. So what else? Moon of Alabama, and of course everyone in the MCSC network. Richard Medhurst. These are new channels that I highly recommend for you guys to check out. In addition to Gray Zone and Jimmy Dore.
Facts. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. So Robbie, are there any final words you want to say before we close off here?
No, man. I mean, other than the fact that, I guess, thanks for having me on once again. It was nice to have me and you specifically to catch up a little bit, because I know it's been a while since we've talked. So, I mean, this was good. But anybody looking for my work, you can, Jaeger, JAEGER.substack.com. That is where the Politified newsletter drops every Sunday or Monday-ish, right around either Sunday or Monday. It really just depends on how crazy my family life is over the weekend. But if it doesn't drop Sundays, it drops Mondays. The newsletter itself is $5 a month, but other reports, my big scoops are still going to be free, because I don't want to withhold really important information. But if you want to get into the nitty gritty and get all the lobby disclosure stuff, all this the stock disclosure stuff, that's all part of the Politify newsletter. You can still find me on Rockfin, as usual, Rob Lit of Fire. Find me on Twitter, because honestly, if you're thinking about Substack but you're not sure what you want to subscribe to it or not, just subscribe to my Twitter. And I say that because a lot of the stuff I'm going to be writing about, it's stuff that only I cover, because it's stories that only I break. I mean, there's going to be a few that slip in from other outlets, because a good story is a good story. An important story is an important story. But if you want to know what I'm going to be covering, I'm going to give you the receipts on Twitter. So Rob Lit of Fire is where I do a lot of my digging. And hey, as soon as I find something, like, information to me is like, it's like money in my pocket, right? It's burning a hole in me. Like, I got to get it out. As soon as I find something out, like, I have to tell everybody about it, so I might break something at midnight, which sucks for my engagements, but I just can't help it, man, because I just, it's just how I am. But, yeah, man, other than that, if anybody that's watching right now and you need a little bit of something to do later, maybe you're bored, you need a little bit of reading material before you go to bed, I encourage everyone to just find some kind of literature or educational material on autism and just read up on the effects of it, and so we can try to build a more educated, inclusive, and accepting world out there for our neurodiverse brothers and sisters. But other than that, that's it for me, man.
All right, Robbie, thank you very much again. It was always a blast having you on and talking about this stuff. So yeah, everybody else, stay informed and take care, everybody. Take care, Robbie.
Take it easy.